Good morning and welcome everyone to this week's Q&A, our weekly Q&A that we really try and focus on professional services businesses. The podcast this morning is a weekly Friday podcast, and we're going to be changing it up from next week. So we'll be providing a different day of the week. We're also going to be doing this in the afternoon as opposed to a morning to include our American audience too. So it'll probably be 3 p.m. Either on Tuesday or on Wednesday. So for those of you that have been following the podcast, thank you very much, and thank you for all the comments and all the wonderful likes and clap hands and all those wonderful things. Thank you very much. We do appreciate. I sincerely appreciate all the feedback and the wonderful questions and so on. This week's Q&A, we do focus on mergers and acquisitions. We focus on during the week when we do lots of interviews, and when I say we, I talk about myself and my team. Focus on the when I interview the guys in the sort of, I say guys, and when I mean that, I mean people. Really, the idea is to speak to the M&A fraternity and focusing on those post-merger integration specialists. Often I have people within the M&A fraternity that are potentially dealing with the deal making side. So that's the elements up front. So that's things like due diligence. That's when we deal with the sort of the deal target selection, and even just going even one step earlier, which is the planning of an M&A deal. The strategic side of things, when you look at why do you do an M&A deal all the way through to its accomplishment and so on. But the Q&A on sessions that these sessions are all about, it's about, for me, it's about the industry itself. It's the makeup, the way that these companies have been put together. The challenge that I've noticed, and I was having a conversation with somebody yesterday, and I expressed this particular challenge that when you're dealing with the professional services entity, and what do I mean by that? A professional services entity is really made up of highly skilled, highly educated, well-experienced individuals. So we're talking about, most of the time, professional services businesses are made up of people that are in business at least 10, 15, 20 years or so. They have essentially stepped out of potentially a corporate role, or have stepped out of a business that they potentially have run, but have gone into a professional services environment. So what do I mean by professional services? Professional services really are the doctors, the dentists, the lawyers, the accountants, the plumbers, the mechanics. And in the space that we work with mergers and acquisition professionals. These individuals that really create these professional services businesses, but targeting or working with this niche, if you like. The difficulty with a professional services business is that it has a very low barrier to entry. So in order to get into a professional services business, you really just need one person and a client, and you could have a contract with a client and it would become a professional service business. However, the difficulty then starts to arise because a professional service business often creates this sort of its own identity or own sort of set of rules, if you like, because professional services often is related to taking on one client, taking on a second client, taking on a third client. and then getting to capacity. Sometimes one client brings you to capacity. So in order to scale, what professional services businesses often do, and that is to bring in additional professional services individuals, so professional experts that can join them in their firm. But I think one of the definitions for me that are critical in professional services and in any business is that you got to, at the very outset, you got to decide what business you're in and what is the business model. So although there's been so many, it's a lot like software. When people talk about cloud, what is the true definition of cloud, for instance? What is the true definition of a business? And a business for me is an entity that can run itself, is an entity that can continuously run without you having to provide any input. In other words, it already has a number of elements. And today I want to raise 5 key elements that I think are critical to running a professional services business. The professional services individuals are almost always, and I've very, very, very seldom have seen professional service businesses able to scale. Even these membership-based organizations, where you might have a sort of a fractional environment or a part-time environment, interim environment, where contracts are sold on behalf of other experts. So you'll have 1 or 2 salespeople running around, and they're often seen as sort of a regional director or a manager of some sort of a region and so on. And with a professional services business, these people would go out and generate a work for other professional services individuals. These contracts are often then done on a do it with you or do it for you space. So if you take something like a CFO or a financial director type organization or a professional services business, you could go and sell 5 hours a week of your time, one day a month out of your time. And then you only have a certain capacity in which you can deliver. So in the M&A space, in the mergers and acquisition space, in private equity, when we look at PMI or post-merger integration or post-acquisition integration specialists, or anybody that provides services, let's say in the M&A environment, but I mean, it could be lawyers, accountants, etc., or it could be businesses that they buy. So any professional services business that you buy. So digital marketing is another one, is also a professional service business. And when I say professional service, I'm saying that there's a specific skill, specific set of education, and there's a specific level of experience in order to start one of these businesses and run it properly. So let's just start again. So we say, in order to have this low barrier to entry, you literally need a bit of experience, knowledge, and some education, and in order to sell yourself, and then take up on a client, a contract. Then you got a professional service business. But the definition of a business for me, is a business that is an entity that can run itself without you having to be there. The difficulty with professional services businesses, however, is that everything revolves around the ability of the professional services person to deliver themselves. So they literally selling their time. And if you want to really be quite harsh about it, they're really selling part of their life in return for an income. And I suppose that's where the difficulty comes in. And my view is that unless you are able to scale out of that, a professional services business generally can grow from 1 person to 2 to 3 to 5 to 10. I've seldom seen reasonable professional services businesses go beyond. I'm talking about the seniors now. I'm not talking about junior people that might be employed, or back office staff, or maybe 1 or 2 salespeople, a bit of a marketing and so on. But generally, they don't scale beyond 25 or 30 people. To get to the Blackstones and the Bains and all those, Bain and Company. If you want to look at really large entities, PricewaterhouseCoopers, for instance, you're looking at entities that have managed to scale, but all they do is they literally bring in professional people, consume them, if you like. They become the actual product, the engine room, and then when they're no longer needed, they then exit. So professional services has got a really interesting way of dealing with it, and how do you scale it? And today I want to share five things that need to be taken into account. But just on the definition of a business, is an entity that can run itself. But a professional services business is often a self-employed environment. So we got to be very careful of calling a professional service business actually a business. It is really just a contract-based environment where you take on the next contract, you take on the next interim arrangement or fractional arrangement, or you take on a 2-hour a week, a 5-hour a week type of sort of contract. If it's a service level agreement, let's say you're a digital marketing agency or you're an agency of some sort, you will go and engage with a client. You'll have a weekly or monthly meetings, but it is very, very hands-on, if you like, and it's very difficult to systemize that. Okay, so here are the 5 sort of points that I'd like to share with you today, and I think if you could maybe in this Q&A session or this weekly session, just think about what you can do this coming week to start rethinking the business model. If the biggest challenge is to step out of the professional services mindset of being self-employed. The difficulty is that once you're at the self-employed status, it's incredibly difficult to sell that business. And in my experience and in my sort of journey, if you like, over the last 28 years, the times that you can make the most sort of wealth building events in your life is at exit, is when you sell a business. When you're running a professional services type business or a business that is not sellable. Now, a business that can't be sold often is something that doesn't have a system or a process that is repeatable, and you can't extract the owner or owners or key people out of the business, and the business won't continue running without them. So often for me, professional services businesses are incomplete businesses. There are elements of it that make it incomplete. Yet, I mean, they deliver incredibly important work, and make no doubt the professional services business as an industry is I think critical in this knowledge world that we live in. So there's no disputing that without professional services firms and individuals that go out and use their life's work, their experience, their education, and even their purpose to exist. Most of the people that I interview during my podcasts have a true sense of purpose about what they're giving the world, what they are delivering. Okay, so let's touch on those 5 points. So number 1 is often professional services businesses run entities that when they approach and get to a new client, although they might have a blueprint, they might have a process or a bit of a framework, very seldom does a professional services business have a repeatable process. Now, what do I mean about a repeatable process? I mean, a repeatable process is a process that can keep going, and is been created in such a way that doesn't matter who does the actual work. So you can bring new people in. The quality, the speed, the actual deliverables are achieved. Does not matter who actually does the work. So it's a repeatable process. So it is one that you can scale. So unless you've actually thought about this kind of thing, what happens with professional services businesses, they get to a new client and they end up creating, although they've got a process, they end up creating every single time a custom solution. The difficulty with a custom solution every single time is that you really have to then take what you have in terms of, let's say, folders and files and blueprints and tools and templates and things like that, and then reformulate them and readjust them to the client space. So the difficulty there becomes, number one, is it's very difficult to explain if it's not a repeatable process. It becomes very difficult to sell. It's often, I actually smile when I hear some of the sales pitches of professional services businesses, because when they get asked something like, tell us what you do and how much is it going to cost us, and then it's going to, the answers are often, you know, what we have to do is we first have to do an assessment, we first have to do a review of your needs and so on, and then we'll put together whatever the scope is, or the scope of work, or whatever the terms are that the service company uses, and then provides then a, let's call it a proposal. The proposal then is often filled with things that the potential client never reads. And almost always have I seen these proposals go to clients, they skim through it, you're lucky if they read it, and then literally page through to the last page and look at the price. And you might be up against 2 or 3 or 4 competitors as a professional services entity, and you're pitching for some work. The difficulty then is that the discussion often starts with the price. Okay, so then it says, okay, well, this guy is going to charge me X, and this guy's going to charge me Y, and that person is going to charge me Z. And ballpark, I think we'll probably go with the one that's a bit cheaper, which people generally do. And then they start going through a process of sort of interviewing and so on. But the difficulty with a process that's not repeatable. Good morning, Casper. I see Casper Durant, Dr. Casper Durant has joined us. Thank you very much. I think if you look at the process, if you don't have a repeatable process, if you don't have a process that's got a way to explain it, to cost it, long before you engage with the customer. And I think that's where professional services firms fall over, and often use up or consume so much billable time that they waste a lot of time doing proposals. I mean, if you actually see some of the proposals that get done, some of them are masterpieces. I mean, they are done with absolute detail, clarity. I mean, they are beautiful, beautiful documents. Clients, however, don't really appreciate the amount of work and effort that goes into a custom proposal. If it is a very big project, and obviously it's got to go through a level of scrutiny, number one is they look at the price. Number two is then they would then shortlist who they think it is. And if you got a reasonable brand and you got decent enough reputation, etc., and there's a bit of relationship, they might look at you more than someone else. Then, you know, there's potentially, if you look at a percentage, I've looked at it, it's between 20 and 30% of your time to get a new contract. 20% of the cost sits within the proposal stage. And again, with professional services, you probably don't win all the contracts either. So the difficulty now is, as a professional services business, because you're customizing every single proposal, it becomes very, very time consuming. Now you need to almost employ someone just to do proposals. And the other problem with that is that if you have too few people, proposals take a very, very long time to finish, to complete. I mean, I work with a few professional services businesses where theoretically you should be able to, if a prospect or client asks for a quotation or a proposal, you should literally within 15 to 20 minutes be able to produce a proposal. But because the professional service entity has not thought about a repeatable process that they're able to cost initially upfront without having to engage the client, knowing exactly what it is that they produce, and can produce for the client the outcome. The repeatable process is absolutely number one. And the way to create a repeatable process is to understand your delivery framework, what you can do, who your target market is, where your actual assets sit in terms of what you can deliver to a client. So that's number one, is if you want to scale and grow your professional services business, that's number one, is to work out a framework. And there might be then the ability to say, okay, I'm going to create product A, product B, product C. Let's say you got a basic, sort of a middle, and an advanced version of what you do. And you can then always, if a customer says or prospect says, you know what, can we take that out and tweak that? It's much easier to take a process that's already been pre-created, proposals that have already been pre-done, costing that's already been pre-done, to then just do the final small bit of negotiation or tweaking. But where you waste so much time as a professional services entity is to every time to take out an old template and then to try and retweak and customize the solution. So number one is, in this week, I'd like to challenge you to create a repeatable process. The second sort of place is many professional services businesses, often because it's a feast and famine. So you get work, you do the work, and then you got no work, and then you go out to look for new customers. So it goes up and it goes down, goes up and goes down. And you're lucky if you can have a nice flow of work. In other words, you constantly have people asking you to do work. But it's like if you own a property or you own a hotel or some kind of venue, there are always going to be rooms empty. In fact, I heard a stat the other day that when they build a hotel, for instance, they find that obviously it's got to be in a reasonable place, that almost always the hotel is booked 70 or 80% to capacity almost every time. So the bigger the hotel they build, obviously within reason, the more rooms they're going to sell, knowing that there's around 15 to 20% that they will probably not full unless there's a big event. But if you put in the right place, and so on, I mean, I'm not talking about all the other factors, but I'm just saying, if it is at the right place, you generally, if you build yourself a small hotel with 10 rooms, you're generally going to have 8 of them rented. But if you build a 100-room hotel, you're probably going to have 80 of them rented. Now, the thing about professional services is that it is really around saying, there's a lot of time that's going to be spent right up front creating these proposals, and often it's 10 to 20 to 30% of the time is wasted. And you also have a lot of these dead times where you have to then go out and look for new business. And if you then average your income out over a 12-month period, you'll find that you're probably sitting at 70 or 80% capacity in terms of billable, if you're lucky. So where I find a big issue, and this is number two, and this is the niching of your professional services entity, or niching of your client base or your target market and so on. So much has been written. So much has been written. I also can't remember when I last saw you, Dr. Casper. So much has been written about niching and finding your niche, but you have to take that seriously. You have to really take it seriously in terms of who are you truly serving? Who do you talk to? Who is your key person in the organizations that you're targeting, and what is the industry that you work in? Industry experience, industry speciality. If you look at the M&A world, which is where we're doing all our podcasts these days, mergers and acquisitions, post-merger integration work, post-acquisition integration work, it has come to a point now where practitioners and professionals, they are scrutinized in terms of not just their ability to work within a particular industry, but to work within a specific skill set within an industry, And then there's even things like global or local knowledge, network, or the ability to pull other professionals in to help complete the work. So niching is massively important. We can deal with niching separately as an entirely separate topic at some stage, but niching your message and so on, so you're absolutely clear to who you're communicating. If you've got a repeatable service, repeatable process, and you know who you're doing that for, it becomes a lot easier to sell and deliver really good outcomes for your clients. Without a repeatable process, what happens, and without a niche, what happens is you take on any client from any industry. You take on any next job, as long as it's the next job. And it is almost it's a difficult thing. And I do speak to a lot of practitioners, and this is where they sit and have problems. The difficulty, though, is how do you decide what not to do? And much has been written about this, but what do you say no to as opposed to what you say yes to? And if you're professional services, when you're getting proposals, you don't get 100 opportunities a week. You might get only 1 or 2 or 3 potential opportunities in a month, in a 2-month period, and you might then only do a proposal. Then you might only get the work or not. So if you don't have a repeatable process, you haven't decided on who your niche is, the number of leads or prospects or potential deals could come in are diminished significantly. So number 1, absolutely think through your repeatable process. Number 2, think through who the niche is that you're trying to service, but not just the niche, what you can specifically do for that niche. In other words, geographically, skills, the ability to deal with the unique problems of that particular client. Number 3 is most professional services businesses tend to do things on their own. Okay, so when I say that is, they very seldom set up an underlying software system and business process. So it's one thing to tell a client, look, I'm going to do X, Y, Z for you. But when it comes to running their own businesses, that's where everything gets neglected. There's been periods even in my career where I walk into my office and I see piles of things that I need to get to. My own bookkeeping, my own employment reviews, my own there's stacks of documents that I need to read through. There are, my own business is being neglected at the expense of delivering great service to my clients. And until I'd actually said, you know what, I've actually got to see this as a proper business. And how would a proper business run? How would I advise my clients to run their business? Until I'd actually seen that. You've got to systemize your business. You've got to say, what can I automate? What system do I need that can underpin and underline the actual business that I run? And can I think of it as a business? And I want to go one step further, is that if I had to advise on a company for growth, let's say they need to launch a new product, or they want to go and buy a new business, or even just do an expansion in terms of a new geographic area, what is the first thing they do? They build a business plan, don't they? They put together a business plan. They put together cash flow forecasts. They put together some kind of budgets, understanding what is required and understanding all the different elements of the business in order to scale that business. Then the next step would be, if they don't have enough working capital, they would then go out to a finance institution to invest in the growth or expansion or the development of that business. That is 101. But what I've seen professional services businesses often is that they don't treat their own businesses like a business. That's why I call it self-employment. If you do, and this is what I've done over the years, is I've said, enough of the chaos. enough of this. Every time I've got to really put space aside on a Sunday when I should be with my family, when I should be somewhere else, or even not exercising or not looking after my health or whatever it is, I now have to sit and do my bookkeeping. I now have to sit and do my invoicing. I now have to sit and read through those endless reports to make sure that I'm on top of things. As soon as I started systemizing, bringing in a very good CRM, marketing automation, so that my marketing is working all the time, I'm constantly having new leads come in, have a proper, simple things, website, sales funnels, having a social media presence, doing reputation management out there, making sure that people are rating and giving me stars and things like that. And whoever I communicate with, whether I get the deal or not, the engagement I have with a client, whether I get the contract or not, I often ask for a review in terms of the way I conducted myself. And almost always I get the review. It is just people value being asked, and people value seeing that they have reviews. So, is that systemized? Do you have your reputation management systemized? Do you have your lead generation systemized? Do you have your websites and that doing the right kind of work? And do you have the engine room to generate new leads? Then once the leads come in, do you have a place to store them automatically? Do you have an automated billing system? Do you have an automated timekeeping and reporting system? I mean, have you set things up so that when we do professional services work, often the client says, I want a weekly or a monthly report or feedback, or I want to know what the progress of the project is. Do you do everything yourself? Do you bring in project managers? Do you provide dashboards? Great, then that's excellent. But is that systemized? Is that in a place where you could push a button and you can get all that information quite easily? Or is it having to speak to someone, phone, have a meeting, and consuming time for yourself? So an underlying system and software system is very, very important. The number 4, so let's just go through it. So repeatable process 1, niche 2, underlying software system 3. Number 4 for me is understanding not just the technical aspect, but understanding the customer journey. I mentioned this in a previous podcast before, and I just want to just repeat it briefly. And that is using the analogy of taking your car or your vehicle for a service, for instance, or its annual checkup or whatever it is that you do. If the mechanic goes off on a tangent and explains all the different moving parts and what the combustion happens if you got a petrol or diesel, or if you got now these days battery operated. I mean, if the technician goes off on a tangent and explains to you all these kind of things, it's sort of like, is it important? It's going to go over your head. What you really want is to understand, when you take your car in for a service, is the journey that you're going to be taken through. In other words, let's say the journey is, I need to drop my vehicle off in the morning. Will someone take me to my place of work? Will I get a nice cup of coffee? When I get my vehicle back, is it nice? Is it washed? Is it cleaned? Do I understand whether the quality of the people in the background, whether the workshop is clean, they're using the right spares and parts? Will I be able to see the spares? At least just get a visual of what they've taken out, what they've replaced. What is the customer journey that I'm going to go through? I'm not too concerned. I am concerned on the technical side, but what sells it for me is it easy? Is it quick? Is the outcome going to be of high quality? And am I going to have any problems? And the other thing that often comes up is, when problems do occur, how are the problems being dealt with? And many professional services businesses don't actually think through the actual customer journey. They think through what they're going to put in the proposal in terms of the deliverable that needs to be done, and not the journey in which their client is going to go through. And it sounds like it's the same thing, but it's absolutely not even close. So that's one thing that stops dead in its tracks professional services businesses from scaling, and that's that inability for the customer journey to be explained in such a way that the person that you're trying to contract with sees it from their point of view of how they will be treated, and if there's anything that goes wrong, because nobody believes, if you've been in business for a while, you should not believe that everything always runs perfectly smoothly. You got to be able to say, look, in the case that things don't work out, this is our remedial process. If there's any issues and thing that you want to raise, this is the process in which you can raise them. I've not seen any proposals that deal with that kind of thing, and it's a weakness. It's not something a customer asks up front, because people are always excited about trying to get a new project or a new thing off the ground, but very few people actually propose what happens during the process. And I think it actually shows expertise, and it shows your ability and understanding of an industry and of a niche. And then the fifth point is really, it's a difficult one to deal with, but one of the things that I've noticed across the board with professional services business, and I mean, I'm going to use the accounting industry as a great example. You go onto any bookkeeping or accounting business website, for instance, and almost all of them say they can do tax returns, they do annual financials, they will do the bookkeeping, they'll do compliance and other statutory type of work. That's what they do. So when they want to try and be different, and I'm not slamming the accounting business, I'm just using this as a really good example of businesses not being able to be creative in terms of the way that they differentiate themselves. So how can you differentiate yourself in a highly commoditized environment? I mean, these days there's a lawyer, accountant, there's different professional services businesses on every street corner. There's a digital marketer, you name it, there's on every street corner, there's some repeat of something. How do you make yourself different compared to everyone else? And this is where the difficulty comes in professional services, because every professional services business that I've seen, what they try and do is they take an existing set of things that they do, and all they do is they create what they call an improvement offer. So what do I mean by that? If you take a motor vehicle, the internal combustion engine, for instance, was developed 100 plus years ago. Petrol, diesel, whatever the fuel was, internal combustion engine, the engineering of that has not changed. It is, it's pistons moving in and out. It's an explosion. It's the pressure goes out. There's an exhaust, and more fuel goes in to the chamber, and another explosion, and so on. And that just happens whatever revolutions per minute. Okay. Internal combustion engine as a technology has not changed. What motorcar companies have done over the years are literally just improvement offers. In other words, all they've done is they've made it slightly more efficient. They've added radios and air conditioning and maybe sunroof, But if you look at an internal combustion engine motor car, it is very much the same as the first motor cars. They're just better. It's just an improvement on the previous version. When the new model comes out, how much better is it really? It's still an internal combustion engine. Now they just got a lot more electronics, but it's still the same technology. Think of that in terms of a professional services business. I mean, if you're an accounting firm, for instance, can you do a better tax return than the next accountant? Can you do better annual financials? Yeah, maybe. Can you do it a bit faster? Can you do it neater? Can you do it on a system instead of on a typewriter? Maybe. That's an improvement offer. But what clients truly want, and this is what's difficult in a professional services business, is coming up with an alternative solution to what their current issues are. So there have been alternatives, and probably a good example would be the taxi industry as an example. I mean, people use this again, and it's probably cliche already, but if you take the taxi industry and then you take Uber, that is not an improvement offer. That is an alternative offer of the same thing. You're still providing the transport. You're still providing whatever it is that you can, but the improvement offer is now doing the same thing but entirely differently. If I look around London and I see now, yesterday I had a meeting with a great guy, and he lives in Notting Hill, and we met near the Shard in London, and he took one of those electric bicycles that you, on an app, you go up to these little pod stations and you go and you select on the app, you make a payment, you grab your bicycle, and it literally drives you through. And he had driven through I think Green Park, and he'd driven through or ridden through a number of really great areas, and there's a lot of space being made now for cyclists and so on. He's not using an internal combustion engine. He's not using a taxi, but he is now enjoying a really nice ride, but he's still getting to the place that he wants to be. That is an alternative offer to the same issue, which is transport. And this is something that you're going to have to wrestle with. Is how can you not be the same as everyone else? How can you stop being an improvement offer? How can you be an alternative way of doing the same thing out there? Those are the 5 points I wanted to share with you today. Dr. Durant, thank you very much for joining. I do appreciate. For anyone else watching on any of the other channels, please like, subscribe, comment. Disagree with me if you like, add any additional points, and again, you're welcome to even be on one of my podcasts. I've got 3 different podcasts. The one focuses on post-merger integration or post-acquisition integration, M&A space, where we talk to people within that environment. I've got a second podcast where we talk to marketing leaders, people that that have dedicated their lives to becoming marketing, sales, and business development specialists over their careers, and have taken often a particular niche or a skill or something unique, and have become really I would say superstars at those specific places. So marketing as a science, as a skill, as an art. I speak to individuals with that. And then my third podcast, I talk to people that use business management software, use ERP, enterprise resource planning software, and make use of software. I'm talking about business software now. I'm not talking about fancy little apps and TikToks and all that kind of thing. I'm talking about the diesel engine, the underbelly of most businesses, which is to get invoices out, to do marketing automation, to do your sales and CRM, to do your e-commerce, to be able to handle suppliers, procurement, to be able to handle warehouse management and stock control, and all that. Those really core sort of software that is, it's not flashy. It's not, bells and whistles. It's the workhorse. It's the diesel engine room, if you like, of most businesses, a critical element to it. And I talk to individuals that make use of, or buy, or purchase, or implement the business management software and ERP, with a bit of a slant towards M&A, because mergers and acquisitions often require the joining of different or disparate IT systems, infrastructures, data, billing systems, all that type of thing, and that's a fascinating space. Marketing is the same thing. When you do mergers and acquisitions and you're doing integration work, often the products or services or geographies or sales teams or even marketing, messaging, branding, etc., all have to come together. If you're doing acquisitions of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 businesses, how do you bring all of that stuff together? That's a great topic within the marketing arena. And then obviously the first one, which is the post-merger integration specialists, practitioners, etc., mergers, acquisitions. It's people that do this stuff every day. So once a deal has been struck, once a target company has been found and selected, and there's a due diligence and there's a negotiation and there's a financing and everything is in place, and now from day one going forward, how do you get that value creation? How do you build that synergy model, and how do you implement the strategic outcome that is required by the team implementing or requiring? So it could be a private equity firm, could be corporate acquirers, could be venture capital, private equity, high net worth individuals. It could be family offices that are doing acquisitions, or it could be someone new that's left their current position and have decided to go, instead of starting a new business or bootstrapping a new business, to go in and buy an existing entity and rolling up 2 or 3 entities to build something of value within 3 to 5, 7 years, exiting. Because again, I believe the wealth building place in life, in any business environment, is not earning the money while you own the entity. It is at exit. And that I've seen through and through, and the ability to exit. So coming back to close off our session for today, the 5 areas in order for you to be able to build a professional service business, in order to exit that business and at least leave that business, that hard work that you've done building it, and leave it with a tidy sum of money at exit, so that you can obviously build a family legacy or wealth or whatever it is, but actually retire if that's your goal. But these are the 5 things that I think, and that's building a repeatable process, understanding who your niche is, and really be able to service them properly within that space. Making sure you got an underlying system, business process, standard operational procedures, standard documentation. If you've got a repeatable process, it's easy to implement a good underlying system. Number 4 is understand your customer journey, not from a technical or delivery. I mean, if you're a dentist, being explained how someone's going to rip a tooth out or drill you or put stuff in your teeth and so on is not as important as, how long do I have to wait? Can I get my appointment? When I get there, will I at least feel safe and comfortable? Will they knock me out? Will the injections be sore? How long will it take me to recover? What happens if something goes wrong and they find something else? What's it going to cost me? I mean, there's a ton of customer-based questions and things that happen. So understand your customer journey. And number 5, which is the toughest one, is you got to move away from the improvement offer. You're not just improving a motor car. You need to provide an alternative to be different in the marketplace. So there's 2 things. One is create an alternative offer and try and be first within that alternative offer. It doesn't mean that you can't sort of try and emulate someone else's alternative offer. I mean, if you look at Uber, you got Lyft, and you got other entities. So you can actually take other alternative offers and improve on those again. But at least it's an alternative offer, and you're not in the same, that sort of red ocean, blue ocean. If you've seen that kind of strategy, red ocean is where all the blood is, and where the sharks are eating and people are eating each other, and there's just a crowded space. Create your own blue ocean. And I think that's really the message around Don't just create an improvement offer, but create something separate. Thank you very, very much for joining me on this week's sort of weekly Q&A and sort of weekly sort of check-in. This is literally a podcast I do every week, just to share my thoughts, share my ideas around what's happened in the week that's passed. Who have I spoken to? What conclusions and observations have I made? And really, I hope that these kind of sessions will help and inspire you to say, okay, what can I do this coming week to just be just that little bit better, to be that better for myself, for my client, for my family, and then also just go closer and get closer to fulfilling my purpose in life. Thank you very, very much for joining me. Have a super weekend. Next week, I will announce whether it's a Tuesday or a Wednesday afternoon, but we will now be doing this because of our American clients. And afternoons is sort of central and West Coast. That's about the time that they start waking up. So probably 3 o'clock or so in the afternoon will be the next sessions. Thank you very much, Dr. Duran. Thank you very much for joining us, or joining me today. Please drop me comments and likes and subscribes and all that fancy stuff, and look forward to seeing you at the next one. Goodbye.